Well, when I was preparing for this show, I was stuck, I had to say, saying, how am I going to not so much talk about grief, but how do I make this conversation about grief and open it up to how are we grieving in adoption and foster care and those types of losses. So I thank you for making it easier for me, because it is a difficult conversation that somehow you go, I want to be here for a long period of time, but you're still going through, the scars are still there. It doesn't mean you have to brush everything away, but you have found your flow and what did I write here, which I kind of like, sharing the pain of life with the joys of life. I mean, that's
and it is that two-sided coin, right? And I remember my daughter saying in the very early days, wow, Mom, it's like all the emotions all at once.
Oh God, yeah.
And it is. And I remember us talking about how we would become masterful at holding paradox, right? Because we could be so grateful and pleased that people were coming to visit us and so devastated by the reason that they were at the same time, all entangled together. It's that messy, stuck pot of spaghetti that's a little bit overcooked and it's all stuck together and tangled. That's what it is. It's all the emotions all at once.
Yes. I like that. I can see that pot of messiness, actually, of emotions. All right. So I'm curious, how did you feel your personal experience? We're going to get into adoption, but your biological mom, your adoptive mom, but how did you feel your personal experience as an adoptee influence, like the way you approach grief?
That's such a good question. Yeah, it's such a good question. And I had never thought about it until actually another woman from that mastermind who said to me one day, we were talking about, my grief journey and all my different losses. And she said, but you've been grieving since you were born. Because the very first thing that happened to you is that you were taken away from your mother. And I was like, what? I had never really thought about that way. And I'm someone who had a really positive experience in the family I grew up in my raising family, I call them, because I knew, and it's funny, that's such childish languaging, but I've always known I was adopted. I don't remember my parents sitting down and telling me. It's just a part of who I was. And so when I was really little, I used to brag to my brother. So I have an older and a younger brother in my raising family that I was raised with, who are both biological children of our parents. It's a little bit complicated. And I remember saying to them, well, I'm lucky because I have two moms. I had a borning mom and a raising mom, and you only have one. In the way that kids can be so sassy, that was like I'm so much better than you.
So when were you, I just want to take it back. Sorry, I just want to take it back. So you said, when did you enter care? And was this a family that was known to?
No. So I was born in 1967, and like many young women of that era did, my biological mom was sent away from the city where she lived to a different city to have me. So I was born in Vancouver. She didn't live in Vancouver at the time. And the family that adopted me were grounded in Vancouver. They actually lived in Kelowna at the time. So it's all kind of geographically complicated. But I was born in Vancouver. That's where the main sort of women and children's hospital was. For the province, and I was adopted immediately. Yeah, my baby pictures, it's so funny because it's so interesting as an adoptee who was adopted as an infant. Like I was adopted when I was days old. And my baby pictures that my family had were me swaddled in my mom's arms at the airplane at the time from Vancouver to Kelowna was small enough that you went out onto the tarmac and walked up the stairs.
Oh, I remember those.
My brother's baby pictures are like them in the incubator in the hospital. And my baby pictures are like in my mom's arms at the base of the stairs to go up to go home. So there really was no way they couldn't have said that there was something different about me than my brother's, because I would have noticed that right from the very first pictures, there is something different going on here. And the thing that I'm the most grateful for, and has been really something that I've talked about with my birth mom since reconnecting with her, is that my parents' story for me of why my mother would have given me up always was unfailingly that would have been the hardest thing she ever did in her entire life.
Oh, okay.
The hardest decision she ever made.
Yes.
And that she did it because she loved me so much.
Yes. Yes. Well, that's what
So
I came
that
to
was my
realize for
story.
myself. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that
I came
was
to
my
realize.
story.
Yeah. So, sorry for the but I was just saying I came to realize that too, that in order for my mother, biological mother, to give me up had to be the most difficult thing. And as a mother, I'm 9 months you carry this child. But I've written
36
poetry
hours of labor I had with my daughter, and then you don't even get to keep it. Like, I can't even imagine.
Yeah. Or the choice to give, my mother had the choice to give me but I was born in 49. So those days, like, what was the choice for especially a young Black mother who was coming into another country, and all that. So that's a point of forgiveness, and that helps us to get through some of the scarring. But I love that you had a positive experience with your parents, and I love that you call them your parents. It's not a question. It's not my foster parent. These are my parents.
Oh yeah, they're my parents. Yeah,
they're your parents in every way. They were supportive. So going back to what you said. Somebody else from the mastermind was saying that you were grieving from the time you were born. So does that still hold true when you think of it that way?
It really does. And that's what I think is so interesting. It's that paradoxicalness, anyway.
Something.
It's that sense of, I had a really great upbringing in a lovely family, and still knew that, like, I still wondered all the time if there was someone out there that looked like me.
Everybody says that. Everybody.
Like, is there somebody else? And I would see people on the street and think, oh, they kind of look like me. Like, maybe I'm related to them, because you just don't know. And so even with an amazing positive experience, and I, still have two amazing brothers. Our parents have died. Like, a really wonderful family, wonderful upbringing, wonderful relationship with my parents, keeping the fun and dysfunctional, as most families do, right? Even with that, there always was that sense that I was like, one of these things is not like the other from that Sesame Street song.
Right. So when
and even in so many ways, I looked like them because your mannerisms are so similar. And however they had navigated that adoption, they actually did place me with a family where I looked quite a bit like them, which I don't know how you figure that out, or if it's just luck. Or it's like people and their dogs and you just grow to look like each other. I don't know.
Did you ever ask them if they got to pick? Like, do they go? I ask people, is it you go to the home and you bring a child home and they're in foster care until you adopt them? Do you know any of that history?
Yeah, no, I was adopted right away. There was no foster step. Yeah, I was adopted right away.
So that step, so they go to where? Where do they?
My understanding is they basically picked me up at the hospital. Like, it was that soon after I was born. So obviously the social workers had sorted it all out in the background.
Yes.
But yeah, they knew, they had decided that I was going to that family. So it wasn't like they sort of came and looked at the incubators and were like, oh, we like that one, right?
I wonder, I like that one.
You're at the dog, rescue dog society, and you're like, oh, which one looks nice? Yeah, it wasn't like that. The social workers, however that all worked in the mid 60s, had decided
here's the fit,
that
right
this was going to be the fit. Yeah, that this was the right fit. And weirdly, now that I've connected with my birth mother, we have so much in common and are so similar, and so many similarities with my parents. So it really actually all worked out the way that it was supposed to.
Now, meeting your birth mom, how does that come about?
So I had always been curious about my birth family, obviously. Even though I had an amazing family, you still always have that curiosity and that wonder. And I had I had reached out in like grade 12 and got some non-identifying information. At the time, you could get some non-identifying information. When I was adopted in 67, it was a closed adoption. They didn't have the concept of open adoptions then.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
So it was all closed. Nobody had anybody's information. And I really felt growing up when I would contemplate finding, when you have those, particularly in those teenage years where you think your parents are terrible, even though they weren't, I was like, there's another mom out there for me. Like, maybe I should go find her, right?
Yeah, I would be better off with them. Yeah, right? Yeah.
They would understand me, right? Yes. It's so funny.
Yeah, they would get
understand me because my raising mom and I are very different people. And so I would be like, my birth mother would understand me. Anyways, but I always felt like, everybody involved had signed on for this closed situation. And what right did I have to go disrupt that? Because whatever had happened in the intervening however many years, my birth mom had made peace with her decision somehow, however that had worked for her, and gone on, in my dream, gone on to build an amazing life, which she in fact had. Not necessarily made peace because she carried a lot of grief, but,
yes.
had made an amazing life with a lot of intention, which was interesting for me to learn. And I don't want to really tell her story, but it was really interesting for me to learn from her that as much as I felt determined not to waste this chance I had been given, she also felt determined that if she was going to make that incredibly impossible decision that my parents had told me was my story, which was true, that she was going to make something of the life that she had. So it's really so fascinating.
Can you describe the first moments? I'd love to hear those first moments. You see her, she sees you. What happens?
So I actually discovered her through ancestry.
Mm-hmm.
So my raising mom had died, and she had given me kind of her permission before she did. She was like, if you really want to find them, like, you go find them.
Yeah.
Because we had talked off and on through my whole life about whether I should find them, whether I should not find them, like what would that mean for everybody involved. And so she was like, no, if you need to find them, you need to find them. So I spat into the tube for ancestry, which is a whole different hilarious story, and sent the tube off and ended up finding who I thought was my nephew and turned out to be my brother. Because ancestry gives you kind of, when they match the DNA, what that matches, they say, okay, well, this level of match could be, your grandfather. I forget what the whole list was, but one of the things was nephew. And he's so much younger than me. It never crossed my mind that he was my brother because we're over 20 years apart.
Holy moly.
And I remember saying to my kids, I think I found my nephew. And we're looking at his picture and they're like, yeah, maybe. Like, he kind of looks like us. Anyway, so I had been sending all the matches I got on Ancestry. I'd been sending this very carefully crafted email, because you just craft it really well once and then send it to everybody. That sort of said, oh, hi, Ancestry's given us this level of connection. I'm really on here because I'm trying to find my birth mother. At that point, I had reached out to the government to get all the information that they had. They had tried to find her. So I had gone through official channels first, and they hadn't been able to find her. So I thought, okay, well, next step, we try this weird ancestry thing and see what happens. So I had this whole carefully crafted email about, I have tried through the registry. They couldn't find her, but they knew enough to know that she had been open to finding me. So that really gave me permission to go whole hog. And I said, this is who I'm looking for. This is the only name that I have. If you know her, could you let her know that I would really love to connect with her? So I had sent this out a few times to people that were not related enough to know her. And then I sent it to this match that I thought was my nephew and didn't hear back. And somehow my notifications got turned off. And it was months later, like 2 months later, that my daughter was cleaning out her tabs on her computer. You know how you every once in a while have to close the 80,000 tabs you have open. And she said to me, Mom, have you seen this message on Ancestry? And I said, no, what are you talking about? I don't have any messages. She said, yeah, you have a message back from him and it's your mom. He knows your mom.
Wow.
And I was like, what? So it had been 2 months that message had sat there without me knowing it. So I wrote this so apologetic email because I could only imagine
the story
what that must
on the
have
other
felt
side.
Like for her.
Yes, there's a story now she has. Yeah.
Yes, that's my daughter that I gave up for adoption. Send her my email, tell her I would love to be in contact with her, and then have nothing ever come back for 2 months. I felt awful.
Oh, yes.
I felt awful. Anyway, she lived in Toronto and I live in Vancouver. So had she been within driving distance, I would have gotten in the car and driven there immediately. But that was not, and this was May of 2020.
Yes.
So we're in the high point of lockdowns and, pandemic shenanigans. So, driving to go give her a hug was not a possibility. So we started emailing. We emailed every day and just back and forth, asking questions, learning about each other, trying to, make our story kind of make sense. And then, so that was in May. And then that August for my birthday, my daughter and she conspired together to do a surprise Zoom call, and I got to see her. But she had sent me a picture, and that when I first got that picture that she sent me almost immediately, it was that, oh my God, there's someone who looks like me.
Yes.
We look so much alike. It's shocking for me, because I grew up in a family that I kind of looked like, but I knew that that wasn't about biology. It was about mannerisms and speech patterns and the way you stand and, all of those things, and just a good match. But I really looked like. And when I showed my friends because everyone knew I was adopted, because it was never a secret in my life. So it was never a secret with anyone I knew who knew me to that level. And they were all stunned. They were like, what? I remember showing my brothers and then being like, oh my gosh, you look exactly like her. Like, we look so much alike. It's a bit scary. And then we met her in person. So then we Zoomed back and forth. And so that was in August. And then Ben died in September.
Yes.
So my whole world fell apart within months of meeting her. So, and then I was like, I can't even form sentences. We can't possibly email every day. I can't read and understand. I can't write. I couldn't do anything. So then we got into a pattern of phoning every week, which we still do. We still phone each other every Sunday and have a catch up. And, we communicate a bit during the week as things happen, but that's our, Sunday morning sacred time that we make sure we connect at least once a week. So it's been amazing, and found, 2 more brothers. She has 2 boys. So I have 2 more brothers. And it's so interesting because, the result, which I'm sure is the same for you, because your siblings are all related to you in different ways. Some of them biologically, but not biological, but not having been raised with them. And some of you were raised with that aren't biological. And so each of us kind of end up with our own personal family. So, I'm the only one who is the second daughter of 5 kids, where the other 4 are boys.
5 kids, your biological mom you're talking about has...
Well, no, I'm talking about combining. My personal... my personal siblinghood is an older brother, me, a younger brother, and then 2 more younger brothers.
2 more younger brothers. And, that's...
But nobody else would explain their siblings that way, right? Because for my 2 brothers that I was raised with, we have 3. And for my 2 brothers that I discovered that are attached to my mom, we have 3. But I have 5. So it's kind of weird.
But
and wondrous.
I know, Suzanne, you've met your mom, as you said. I really want to know that emotion of the first hug, the first hold. And for your mom, this is like the baby. You're still a baby to your mom. And so that first hug.
And I was like 50. How old was I in 2021? 54. And she's 20 years older than me. So when we've all had our birthdays in the year, she's 20 years older than I am. So she was in her early 70s and I'm in my early 50s. And it's like, yes. And it's so interesting because it is that there's a biological ancestral connection there, even having not been raised by her and not really knowing her, if that makes sense. Like we haven't spent enough time together to really know each other in a weird way. And yet we know each other intimately, instantly. It's fascinating. Yeah. That first, we're actually here. I don't even understand how this is possible or true or real or... Yeah, we just clung on and cried. It was one of those.
Yes.
Just clung on and cried because it is, talk about tangles of emotions. It's the grief of having missed out on 54 years together. And the joy of and wonder of having found each other at all through this weird, like you spin in a tube and put it in the mail, like how preposterous and weird is that? And now here we are in her home. And she has an instant granddaughter who, like, my daughter and I went together. So it was overwhelming and exactly right all at the same time, if that makes sense.
Wow. Yes, it does. I mean, I just look at the journey. You find out about your mom, you lose your son, all within, as you say, a few months of each other.
Yeah.
That is, and now you are here. Now you are Suzanne, not necessarily, and I don't even want to put this on you. I was going to say not necessarily 100%, but 100% today, 100% present, 100% moment to moment, whatever that is. I'm whole as I am. I stand where I am. I bloom where I am. I'm okay where I am. So I'm 100% in that. Not necessarily in the grander scheme of things. I'm 100% healed. I don't think about that's not the journey. It's just stand where you are, make your choices, get up every day, make a choice. Cause as you said before, stuff comes in, those little triggers come in, and grab you by the throat and go, oh.
Yep. It's like, oh, there's that dagger to the heart again.
Yes,
Great.
yes. There's that
And I remember
dagger.
someone, when very early days after Ben died, a coworker of mine at the time who had also experienced the death of a son, he said to me, and I was so mad at him at the time, and now I'm so grateful, I'll have to tell him that part. He said to me, the difference between the death of a child and any other loss that you will experience is that with other losses, you feel wounded, and then eventually the wound scabs over, and then eventually it heals, and now you have a scar. And I thought, yeah, I get that. Like, that's how I felt about my parents. He said the problem with the death of a child is you get to that scab part, and then just before it heals, something rips that scab open, and you're back right where you started. And then it scabs over again, but it never, for him so far, and I feel the same way, it's such a beautiful analogy. He said for him, it has never got past the scab. It never fully heals to be that scar that's no longer tender, that's no longer, that is a part of you that you carry with you, and you bring that person and they're part of your life because they never go completely away. You don't want to forget them. That's silly. But there's something about the death of a child that it gets to that scab, and just before, like, something will happen to tear it open just before it could be completely sealed over, which I at the time was so mad at him because I thought, what are you telling me this for now? Like, I feel like I'm like falling apart on the ground in pieces, and you're telling me this never going to get any better, which wasn't what he was saying at all, but that's what I heard in that moment. But it's interesting that it's different than other losses. And I think you're right. I love your sense of, when you said, like, I'm not going to put on you that you're 100%, and I was like, oh, I'm nowhere near 100%. But 100% of what? 100% compared to when? 100% in whose measurement? Am I 100% present? Am I 100% having an amazingly powerful conversation that can help people and make a difference? Absolutely.
Yes.
And if I can't own that as 100% and as good enough and as really astonishing, then, there's nowhere to go from here. So I'm with you. I am 100% in it for the long haul. I'm 100% bringing Ben with me.
That's right.
And we'll figure it out moment by moment, breath by breath. That's all you can do.
I just want to say before we close that, when you say that your friend talked to you about his scarring, his scabbing, are you saying that he spoke to you when the early stages?
Oh yeah. It was maybe 2 weeks after Ben had died.
Oh, wow. So that is the conversation.
I was like, how dare you be telling me this horrifying news when I don't even know which way is up? Like,
see, conversations.
But at the same time, it has become such a gift because it changed my expectations, even though I didn't want to hear it.
Yes.
It changed my expectations, and it made it okay for that to be true. And the same way that when I was, I often talk about how we have this difference of connection with our overall community in the beginning of life than we do at the end. Like, if you're a woman who's had children, the second that you show people want to touch your body, which I was like, no, you were not touching my belly at the grocery store. Absolutely not.
Yes,
and for some reason, people want to tell you like their most horrifying birth stories.
Yes.
And I always thought that was so, I'm like, what on earth? And then when my daughter's birth ended up being a little bit scary and taking a really long time and all this stuff, I was like, okay, but all of those people told me their horrifying birth stories and they lived to tell about it and their kids were fine. So it's okay that this feels awful. And now I kind of think, he was living that. The thing I'm asking of people at the other end of life, that we show up and we speak our truth and we let that be okay.
Yes.
That's what he was doing. And holy cow, was I mad at him?
Yes. And I want to say I am guilty of that, telling those birth stories. And I used to say to somebody, to friends, you're pregnant. Listen, I felt like a truck hit me and wouldn't kill me. That's what I felt like. It was hours.
And I just kept riding back and forth over my belly.
And it wouldn't stop. And who wants to hear that when you're just
Congratulations, you're pregnant. Great. Would you like to hear my horrifying birth story?
Let me share. I want to share.
It's weirdly comforting.
Yes.
Right? If you end up in a difficult birth, which I did twice, both of my kids were not easy deliveries.
Yes.
It was weirdly comforting to know this had happened to other people. They survived it. They lived to tell the tale, as it were.
Yes.
And that's the same with grief. Like, no, I didn't want to hear that from him. Mm-hmm. And in the intervening now, not quite 4 years, there's been a lot of times where I thought, oh, shoot, there goes that scab again.
But he also felt he had the right. He felt he had the right to say that because he had experienced that. And that, the universe said, okay, I'm going to say this to you. You may not appreciate it now, but,
but I do now.
Yes.
He knew I needed to hear that, and I needed to be mad about it, and then I needed to deal with being mad about it.
Yes.
And then I needed to go, well, crap, if that's how this works, then what?
Yeah.
And I had another friend ask me about the 6-month mark, and people have responded interestingly to this question, but it came from pure love, because she was one of my stalwart companions that had showed up in the biggest way possible. And she said to me on a walk one day, like, how long are you going to do this for, do you think? Like, how long does this last? Like, this grieving thing, like, how long does it go? Yeah. And it was not her being judgmental or trying to shut me down or anything. We were having this whole conversation about it. And that was her inquiry, right? What she was curious about. Mm-hmm. And I said to her, God, I was like taken aback for a second, and I thought, gosh, I don't even know. And so I thought about it as we're walking. And I said, I think it's forever. I think I'm doing this forever. Mm-hmm. And that also was a real turning point for me, because I thought, well, if this is going to be forever, which it is, I have accepted that completely. I'm okay with it. Why wouldn't I always grieve the death of my child for the rest of my life? It makes perfect sense to me that it should be forever. Then what? Then what does it look like to be living fully and grieving at the same time?
Maybe
what does that look like?
Yeah.
I think it looks like this. I think it looks like we're having these bold conversations, and when we cry, we cry. And when we feel okay, we feel okay. And when we're joyful, and we can be joyful and grieving.
This is how you're wearing it. This is how you are wearing grief. This is how you are wearing love, really.
Yeah.
Grief is kind of...
that's what it is.
A word. It's love. You love. Yeah. How long is this loving going on?
If we didn't care, then we wouldn't grieve, but we do.
Yeah.
And I will love him forever. So of course I will grieve him forever.
Yes.
Makes perfect sense.
Yes. So you wear that, you wear it well, I must say. And I'm sure someone's out there who are watching today. I know there's parents and people who are curious, just curious about how to navigate this, how to say, sorry for your loss, and don't be ashamed. Don't run away. Don't lower your eyes, because we need support. We need support, and we may do it imperfectly, but as long as it comes from a place of love and heart and concern and openness, I think that, like yourself, someone grieving will feel that.
Yes.
Feel that.
Yeah. And that to me is the trick. When we talk, and that's the question I get all the time. So-and-so has died or lost a loved one or whatever. What do I say? What do I do? I don't even know where to start. We're so scared that we're going to do the wrong thing, that we're going to cause harm. But you are 100% right. what we've been taught to say is all closed down. And what we need to say is that open-hearted stuff. Open-hearted, from love, from care, vulnerable, honest. It's very difficult to do harm from that place.
Yes.
What we need to do, the offers we make around what to do, need to be very specific. So we kind of have it backwards. We'll say something that closes down the conversation because it's usually a bit awkward and yucky. And those old cliches and platitudes, we should just never say them again. And then we'll offer, and how many times have we heard, anything you need, I'm here for you, just let me know. But a griever can't do anything with that. Our brains cannot do anything with that. So what you say is that open-hearted, expansive thing. What you offer is, I'm going to the grocery store today. Go and open your fridge and tell me what's missing, and I'll bring it to you this afternoon. Right? Or I'm going to Home Depot because I need yard waste bags. Do you need them too? Can I mow your lawn and then I'll take your waste away?
Do you need a late night phone call? Do you need to go for coffee?
Yes. Very specific. And then they get to say yes or no. This is where you get to use that great skill. We're also good at yes, no questions. That's what we need. Yes, no questions. Or maybe one option. Is it this or that? Like, do you want coffee or tea? Do you want to talk or be silent?
And also, if the person says no, don't take that as a personal affront or, just...
It's not a no forever.
It's not
a no in
yes.
this moment. It's not a no forever.
Yes.
So keep offering. Offer something different. Offer in 3 weeks. Offer in 6 months. Offer in a year and a half. People still need your support that long term, especially when it's a loss of someone really close to them, intrinsic in their life, a spouse, a child, a really close parent, whatever the name of the relationship is, because it's hard when we try and define it by the names of the relationship. It's more important to think about how integral was that person in their life. And if they were really integral, regardless of the name of the relationship, they'll need support for the first couple years at least. And that's okay. We're not supposed to do this by ourselves. This being human thing, we're not supposed to do it by ourselves.
On that note, Suzanne, that was beautiful what you said. I don't think we can say anything more about grief and love and compassion and caring and mistakes and 100% and being human and all of it. So I want to thank you. Or did you have one last thing you wanted to say? Or
I think that's a great place to stop.
Yes, as our lovely Claire would say, Dr. Claire Zammit would say, are you complete?
I feel very complete.
Are you complete? I appreciate you, Suzanne. I hope to see you again in person and to give you a hug just to give you a hug. And I'm so happy you're happy, and I love to see your face. Now, by the way, your salons, you have, do you want to talk a little bit about that before we go?
Sure. Yeah, I'm sure you're going to include all of the links to everything in the show notes or the page or whatever. But a great place for people to start is with my meetup group, and we're doing grief cafes, I call them. And it's really just a place for conversation.
Yes.
And we come together on a drop-in basis on the first and third Wednesday of the month. And you can find the group on Meetup. You can look up me. You can look up Grief Cafe. You'll find it. There's a link in my link tree. So we will guide you there and make it easy. It's a one-click thing. And it's become this really magical place for people to just come together and share what's true for them. And we had, at our last gathering, we had the whole range from someone who had lost their job that was really important to them. That's what they were grieving, to someone who had experienced 5 significant losses within about 2 months. Of a pet and a grandfather and a brother and a loved one and so it's the whole range of, all the things we would place on that hierarchy. All grief is welcome. No matter when it happened, you're welcome. It's a place to just come and have a conversation. And the beauty is that people feel seen and heard. And valued. They get to say their name. They get to talk about what's true. And they get to share what's working for them and what's not working for them. Right? We had an amazing fellow on last time who was talking about how he's doing beautiful writing about his relationship with his wife. And that was really helpful to some of the other people in the room. So we're learning from each other, which really is how we shift this paradigm.
That's wonderful. For all of you out there, all grief is welcome. And yes, we will be attaching everything at the end of the show, so you can join this conversation if you're looking for a place to get a community to talk about it, to air. So thank you again, Suzanne. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Suzanne, for giving us the language. You know, grief talk is important, and sometimes we are so afraid to say things to people or to step in. And sometimes people need space, but sometimes they need a hug. Sometimes they need an ear. So please, if you are able to get those hugs or whatever you can do, I'm sure it would be appreciated. And that is from us to you, that's globally. If you know somebody you can reach out to, reach out. Don't be afraid. I'm Sharon Lee Williams, and this is OutRaised Voices.